faithfully delivering value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, I'm introducing the book History of the Southern Ming. It's the masterpiece of renowned historian Mr. Gu Cheng and a landmark work in studying this historical period with huge influence in historical circles worldwide. The so-called Southern Ming history refers to the period from Emperor Chongzhen's suicide and the fall of the Ming Dynasty up to the Qing Dynasty, specifically until the first year of the King Shi reign, when anti-Qing and pro-Ming forces were largely suppressed. If not examined closely, people often overlook the existence of the Southern Ming, but a series of key figures in Chinese history, especially Zheng Chenggong, Koxinga, made their mark precisely during this era. Plus, the Manchu-Han conflicts throughout the Qing dynasty can only be understood with Southern Ming history as context. The history of the Southern Ming I'm covering today is a work that revisits this crucial period, focusing on three main aspects. First, why was the Southern Ming court so ineffective against the Qing? Second, why couldn't the Han peasant armies stop the Qing military's advance? Third, as the military star of the Southern Ming, what does Zheng Chenggong's failed counterattack signify? Now, let's start going through them one by one. These points. First, let's look at what the Southern Ming court was like. During the Southern Ming period, the orthodox regimes had three reign titles: Hongguang, Longwu, and Yongli. Among these, the Hongguang court was the strongest and most promising for reviving the Ming Dynasty. So we'll begin with the Hongguang court. Author Gu Chen believes there were two main reasons for the Hongguang court's collapse. First, complacency in Jiangnan without striving for progress. The second was the flawed national policy of using barbarians to suppress bandits. Although Li Zicheng's capture of Beijing and Emperor Chongzhen's suicide marked the fall of the Ming Dynasty, however, at that time, the southern regions were still under Ming control, and the secondary capital, Nanjing, had a full set of governmental offices identical to Beijing's. So for southern gentry and officials, the top priority was to quickly establish a new emperor, providing a central figure for Ming loyal people. The emperor chosen by the southern gentry was the Hongguang emperor, Zhu Yusong, who was the grandson of the Wanli emperor. In lineage terms, he was a cousin of Chongzhen and the closest relative to Emperor Chongzhen in the imperial clan. At the start of the Hongguang emperor's reign, the situation in the north was very chaotic. Oh, Li Zicheng hadn't even warmed his seat in Beijing before the Qing army broke through Shanhaiguan and stormed the capital. Unable to resist, Li Zicheng had to retreat westward with his troops. Since he abandoned so much territory and the Qing forces were stretched thin, they couldn't take over quickly, leaving Shandong and eastern Henan in a power vacuum. Local officials and gentry then rallied to restore the Ming Dynasty, which was a golden chance for the Hongguang court to reclaim lost lands. But the Hongguang regime had no clue about this opportunity. First, the Hongguang emperor, as the central figure, one of the Ming Dynasty's trademarks was incompetent rulers. Hongguang was a prime example. After becoming emperor, his top priority was collecting beauties. Not finding enough in Nanjing, he sent agents to Suzhou and Zhejiang. If he saw a beauty, he'd grab her regardless of her consent or marital status. But he didn't stop there. He ordered eunuchs to hunt toads for making aphrodisiacs. Aphrodisiacs? Ha! This emperor was utterly ridiculous, and his ministers weren't better. The real power brokers were Ma Xiang and Ruan Daqing. They couldn't govern, but were experts at amassing wealth, selling official positions. How crazy did it get? Common folks mocked them with a rhyme. Zhengshu officials everywhere, Dudu generals all around, Jianji supervisors like sheep, Jifeng officers cheaper than dogs. That is Their corruption flooded the place with officials, making them worthless. Whom, you might ask? Civil servants avoided war, but generals must have craved it to earn glory and ranks, right? Well, that brings us back to how Hongguang became emperor. Actually, before Hongguang ascended, the Southern Ming court argued over the new ruler. By rights, the Prince of Fu, later Hongguang, was Chengjian's closest relative and the obvious choice, no question. But someone jumped up and said, "No way! The Prince of Fu's incompetent and lustful. In this chaos, we need a wise emperor." Their pick was the Prince of Lu, and the decision maker was Shi Kefa, the powerful figure in Nanjing. But Shi Kefa was indecisive and couldn't make up his mind. Seeing Shi Kefa's hesitation, the Prince of Fu feared his chance would slip away. So he turned to the four powerful warlords for help. Ultimately, with the warlords' support, the Prince of Fu ascended the throne. After becoming emperor, Hongguang rewarded the warlords with titles and territories. Now powerful, they could bully the court above and exploit commoners below while living luxuriously, naturally losing interest in fighting the Qing. Oh, we just mentioned another important figure, Shi Kefa, traditionally seen as a loyal hero of the Southern Ming court. So what was he doing then? First, we can confirm Shi Kefa was loyal, but loyalty doesn't equal competence. Honestly, Shi Kefa's personal abilities were not great. Remember how he hesitated over choosing the new emperor? That shows his indecisiveness in critical moments. Moreover, Shi Kefa wasn't just indecisive, he was somewhat cowardly. Earlier we mentioned the power vacuum in Shandong and Henan was a perfect chance to reclaim territory. Actually, Shi Kefa recognized this, but fear paralyzed him. Think about it. Ming troops couldn't even defeat peasant rebels, much less the Qing army that crushed them. So to Shi Kefa, the safest approach was staying put. Don't provoke the Qing, then actively seek peace to maintain their Jiangman foothold. Ironically, Shi Kefa's thinking mirrored that of Dorgan, the Qing's de facto ruler. When the Qing first took Beijing, Dorgan didn't plan to conquer all China. First, Manchu forces were limited. Second, China's vastness and Nanjing's 100,000 troops made Qing control uncertain. So Dorgan initially aimed only for territories north of the Yangtze River. She even issued an official statement allowing southern gentry to choose their own ruler and protect Jiangnan. Yet, despite the power vacuum and overwhelming advantage, the Southern Ming made no move to reclaim land, just watched the Qing take Shandong and Henan with mere thousands of troops. By now, Dorgan had completely seen through the Hongguang court's weakness and incompetence. So Dorgan openly acknowledged the Southern Ming court in June that year, but flipped and denied it by July. In his letter to Shi Kefa, he outright denied the Southern Ming's legitimacy and demanded they surrender unconditionally to the Qing. Clearly, the Hongguang court's complacent attitude in Jiangnan, not seeking progress, led them to disaster. Moreover, this attitude spawned a ridiculous national policy, using barbarians to crush rebels. Simply put, use Qing troops to wipe out Li Zicheng's rebels, then rule separately across the Yangtze River. But the author argues that after Qing took Beijing, Southern Ming should have seen the main rebel conflict as secondary, while the Ming-Qing conflict was the main issue. It's simple. Qing forces were strongest, rebels second, Ming weakest. So, to survive, Southern Ming should have teamed up with the rebels against Qing. But if they joined Qing, Qing would crush the rebels, then wipe out Ming instantly. As said before, Qing clearly aimed to destroy Ming. Plus, economically, pre-Song, North and South were balanced. Each could sustain a government, unlike now. Hence, Eastern Jin and Southern Song managed separate rule with Northern tribes. But post-Song, the economic gap widened. The North couldn't sustain a capital. In the North, around Beijing, everyone from nobles to troops depended on Southern grain to eat. So if Southern Ming held the South, They'd severed the North's lifeline. Even with the North, Qing couldn't survive there. Thus, Qing had to fight Ming for the rich South. Maybe Qing leaders didn't see it yet, but defected Ming officials like Jin Jijun and Yang Fangxin urged Qing to crush Southern Ming. Lastly, many surrendered Ming officials were Southerners who feared permanent separation from their families if China split. So they pushed Qing rulers to crush the Southern Ming court. But Southern Ming either couldn't grasp this or were too cowardly to face it. Mid-level officials like Zhang Shenyan and Chen Zilong warned against the use barbarians policy. Now, when Tang Guozi used Shatuo troops against An Lushan, he fought alongside them, didn't just hand over the battlefield. You must save yourself first, that's basic logic. But Shikafa and Ma Xiying ignored this and sent envoys to negotiate borders with Qing. Ridiculously, they sent Wu Sangui, who had already defected, supplies and made him governor of Shandong, expecting him to serve both dynasties like Su Qin. Predictably, the Qing detained the laughable envoys without negotiation. Finally, many Ming officials realized Qing couldn't be trusted and prepared for invasion. But Shikafa grew strangely stubborn. He insisted peasant rebels were Ming's true enemy. Even as Qing forces approached, he dreamed of partitioning China. We know the end. After crushing Li Zicheng, Qing immediately destroyed Hongguang's regime. Complacency and the use barbarians policy doomed Hongguang. After its fall, Ming remnants established the Longwu court in Fujian. Longwu was rare among Ming emperors, actually competent. He curbed factionalism and cared for commoners suffering. Strategically sound against Qing, he even wanted to command frontline troops. Sadly, power-hungry ministers controlled him, his ambitions unfulfilled before Qing captured him, a tragic end filled with regret. The Yongli court after Longwu wasn't worth mentioning. The Yongli emperor was cowardly, always fleeing until he became a puppet emperor among peasant rebels, like Emperor Xian of Han. Now let's discuss why the two peasant armies ultimately collapsed. One was the Shun army led by Li Zicheng, the other, the Shi army led by Zhang Shanzhang. Let's start with the more famous Shun army. In 1644, the Shun army captured Beijing, Ming's capital, and took control of most areas north of the Yangtze within months. Given Li Zicheng's troops, fame, and territory, he had real potential to unify China. But why? Just a year later, the Shun army collapsed rapidly. Even Li Zicheng himself was killed. Author Gu Qian attributes this to two main reasons. First, failing to recognize the Manchu threat. Second, consecutive military blunders. Li succeeded against Ming, partly because Ming was fighting on two fronts, against peasant rebels and the rising king. But when Li overthrew Ming and took the throne, he inherited the same dilemma. He too faced two fronts, suppressing Ming remnants and guarding against Qing beyond Shanhaiguan. Yet Li completely ignored this, focusing solely on Ming remnants. He neglected Qing defenses entirely. After taking Beijing, he garrisoned Datong in Shanxi and Baoging in Hebei, but not strategic Shanhaiguan. Worse, he tried to transfer Qing experienced generals from Shanhaiguan after recruiting Ming defenders, like Liu Tian and Wu Sangui. Li Zicheng made Liu Tian governor of Sichuan and ordered Wu Sangui to march troops to Beijing to pledge loyalty to the new emperor himself. Crucially, Li didn't summon Wu alone. He demanded Wu bring his entire army. Clearly, Li planned to reassign Wu's forces elsewhere, abandoning Shanhaiguan. Oh, though this plan failed, it shows Li Zicheng totally underestimated the Qing threat. Maybe he thought since Shun and Qing never fought, they could coexist peacefully. Clearly, that was way too naive. Just over a month after Li took Beijing, Qing forces breached Shanhaiguan. After Qing entered, Li initially planned to defend Beijing, but with insufficient troops in Hebei, he retreated to Shanxi. At this stage, things weren't disastrous yet, but Li's subsequent blunders doomed the Shun army. First fatal mistake, abandoning Shanxi. After retreating to Shanxi, Qing didn't pursue. They returned to Beijing to regroup. For about a month, Li could have rushed reinforcements from Shanxi to fortify Shanxi, potentially splitting North China with Qing. At worst, it'd shield the northwest longer. But instead of defending Shanxi, Li withdrew to Shanxi with his main force. Most garrison commanders he left were recently surrendered Min generals. Predictably, they rebelled as soon as Li left. Northern Shanxi and parts of Shanxi quickly fell to Qing. Meanwhile, Ming gentry overthrew Shun rule in Shandong and Henan. By year's end, Qing attacked the northwest. Shun forces fled after crushing defeat. Li lost all northern bases. Having lost the north, Li tried seizing Jiannan from Southern Ming before Qing could. This plan wasn't bad, but he failed to garrison key cities like Jingzhou and Shenyang. Historically, controlling Jingsheng was vital for conquering or defending Jiangnan, because south of here there's no natural defense. Once enemies breach this line, Jiangmen falls rapidly. If the Shun army doesn't guard Jingshan, they're highly likely to get attacked by Qing forces from behind while fighting Southern Ming. Bai Wang, the Jingshang garrison commander, warned Li Zicheng about this, but Li ignored him, not only failing to defend Jingshang, but also pulling its main forces south with him. Sure enough, Qing forces followed, seized Jingshang, chased relentlessly, and crushed the Shun army, ruining Li Zicheng's plan to take Jiangmen. So he led troops to Hunan, only to be ambushed by local Southern Ming forces there, and Li Zicheng was killed. Thus, the Xin regime was declared destroyed. Now, why did the Shi army, led by Zhang Shanzhang, collapse? The author believes the main reason was Zhang Shanzhang's successor. Sun Qiang was power-mad, wanting to depose the Yongli emperor and crown himself, causing the Ji army to split into infighting. In 1646, just 2 years after the Ming Dynasty fell, Zhang Shanzhang was killed by Qing forces. After his death, the Shi army didn't collapse leaderless like the Shun. Sun Qiang, one of Zhang's adopted sons, took charge. Sun changed tactics and allied with Southern Ming against Qing. In 1649, Qing forces besieged the Yongli court. It crumbled, and the emperor begged Sun Qiang for help. Sun seized the chance to bring Yongli and his few ministers to his territory, Anlong. Anlong, which is today's Anlong County in Guizhou Province. Doesn't this scene remind you of Cao Cao welcoming Emperor Xian of Han to Shudu in history? If Sun Qiang had Cao Cao's vision, using Yongli as a banner to rally Zhang Chenggong, Zhang Huangyan, and other Ming loyalists for anti-Qing resistance, the Shi army's future could have been huge. By bringing Yongli to his side, Sun clearly saw the benefit of holding the emperor to command the lords. But soon, power went to Sun's head, and he eagerly tried to yank Yongli off the throne to take it himself. This move immediately angered anti-Qing factions, including senior Shi generals like Li Dingluo and Liu Wenxiu. So Li Dingluo exploited Sun's distraction, rescued Yongli from Anlong, and moved him to Yunnan. Thus, the two sides were openly at war. However, Li Dingluo and the Yongli emperor prioritized the anti-Qing cause, offering to reconcile with Sun Qiang and fight together. They showed great sincerity. For example, after rescuing Yongli, Li occupied Yongnan, the Shi army's base. Yunnan, Sun's family was there, but Li didn't use them as hostages. He sent them back to prove goodwill. But power-drunk Sun couldn't bear submitting to young Li. After getting his family, Sun immediately started a civil war. Sun had 200,000 troops, Li only 30 to 40,000. Sun expected easy victory, but his generals despised his betrayal of the anti-Qing cause and refused to fight hard. Worse, some defected mid-battle. Sun's army collapsed instantly. He fled with few troops and surrendered to Qing. Thus, Sun Qiang's Shi faction was destroyed. The other faction, under Li Dingluo, remained fiercely loyal to Yongli, dedicated to restoring Ming. But Yongli was hopelessly incompetent. an expert at fleeing. Since his coronation, he'd fled Guangdong to Guangxi, Guangxi to Yunnan, then Guizhou to southern regions, even abandoning Li Dinglo. Li's efforts in Yunnan didn't reassure him. He soon fled to Burma. While Li organized anti-Qing forces in Yunnan, hearing of Yongli's flight, he immediately sent envoys to retrieve him. First, an emperor abroad crushed resistance morale. Second, his safety in a foreign land was uncertain. Predictably, Li's envoys were killed upon entering Burma. Li repeatedly sent troops to retrieve Yongli, but Burma refused. Clearly, Burma saw Yongli as leverage. They wouldn't release him without extracting benefits. But this wasn't the worst part. The real disaster, Qing systematically destroyed Southern Ming's resistance bases. Burma realized the Qing dynasty had consolidated power. Ming restoration was hopeless. No need to offend Qing for Southern Ming. So Burma cooperated with Qing to capture the Yongli emperor, handing him to the Shenji emperor. In late 1661, Burma surrendered Yongli to Qing. After New Year, early in Kangxi's first year, he was executed. Soon after, Li Dinglo died of grief and anger. Thus, the Shi army vanished from history. Lastly, why Zhang Chenggong's navy failed to restore Ming. His fame speaks for itself. Zheng's father, Zheng Zilong, started as a pirate before Ming recruited him as a high-ranking military commander. Tongzi, meaning a very senior military officer. After Ming fell, Zheng Zilong surrendered to Qing, but Zheng Chenggong rejected this, broke with his father, and continued resisting Qing. After years of effort, Zhang built a formidable navy in Fujian that deeply worried Qing. So why did this navy retreat to Taiwan? Author Gu Qing cites two reasons: Zhang's ambition for an independent fiefdom and blunders in the Nanjing campaign. Du Cheng argues Zheng's historical image isn't as glorious as imagined. His ultimate goal wasn't restoring Ming to be a loyal minister, but securing a stable territory for the Zheng family with military political autonomy, like Korea's relationship with Ming, nominally subordinate but self-ruling. Zhang once said he'd surrender to Qing if they met his terms. Otherwise, he'd remain Ming's subject. He negotiated with Qing repeatedly. Talks failed due to unmet demands, but never fully severed ties. In 1654, Li Dinggu, Shi army general, urged Zheng to attack Guangdong jointly from east and west. The author notes this was pivotal for Ming's revival. Most areas west of Guangxi were controlled by Southern Ming and the Shi army. With Zheng in Fujian, seizing Guangzhou via pincer attack would connect resistance bases, transforming the fragmented front. This plan is indeed the best for restoring the Ming Dynasty, but it would greatly restrict Zheng Chenggong's freedom, because once communication with the Southern Ming court is smooth, military and political affairs would have to obey the court, or else he'd be accused of overstepping authority and unreasonableness. So Zheng Chenggong hoped that anti-Qing forces like Li Dinglo could contain the Qing army, reducing his own pressure, while also wanting a Qing-controlled buffer zone between his territory and Southern Ming, so he could use poor communication as an excuse to rule independently. Thus, for Li Jinggo's invitation to jointly recover Guangdong, Zheng Chenggong just kept delaying, neither agreeing nor refusing. Eventually, Zheng Chenggong did send troops under Li Dinglo's eager expectation, but the agreed meeting date was the 15th day of the 10th lunar month. Yet Zheng Chenggong didn't send troops to Guangdong until the 19th. Moreover, Zheng Chenggong's navy never engaged in battle, just watched from the sea. And once he heard of Li Dinglo's defeat, he eagerly withdrew to Fujian. This great opportunity to restore Ming was lost. Just because of Zheng Chenggong's selfishness, it all failed. Later, anti-Qing forces were crushed one by one, and the Zheng family couldn't escape misfortune. Like lips gone, teeth feel cold. Zheng Chenggong's other fatal mistake was falling for Qing's delaying tactic in the Nanjing campaign. In 1658, Qing concentrated forces to attack the Yongli court in the southwest. Zheng Chenggan saw this as a great chance to expand his anti-Qing base in the southeast, so he decided to lead troops north to capture Nanjing. In 1659, Zheng Chenggan and the famous anti-Qing general Zhang Huanyan jointly launched a northern expedition. With Qing's main forces in the southwest, the southeast was weakly defended. Zheng and Zhan's army advanced like splitting bamboo, reaching Nanjing's outskirts in just 2 months. As mentioned earlier, the Jiangnan region was China's main source of finance. The Yangtze River runs through Nanjing, so capturing it would mean Southern Ming controls all of Jiangnan, instantly reversing the economic balance between Ming and Qing. Moreover, Nanjing, as the former secondary capital of Ming, held extraordinary significance in people's hearts. Once Nanjing was recovered, the people's morale for restoring Ming would greatly rise. At this moment, with victory in sight, if Zheng Chenggang had eagerly led troops to attack Nanjing, he would have captured it in one stroke, and Chinese history might have been rewritten. However, the early stages were too smooth. After capturing Guizhou and Zhenjiang, many surrounding counties surrendered upon hearing the news. These victories went to Zheng Chenggan's head. He began to believe his mere presence would make Nanjing's Qing forces surrender without a fight. Just then, Qing commander Guan Shaozhang sent a false surrender envoy while urgently requesting reinforcements and stalling for time. He told Zheng Chenggan, Qing rules spared families only if commanders surrendered after 30 days of defense. So please wait 30 days to avoid endangering my family. This was clearly a stalling tactic. Zheng's generals urged him to attack immediately, but he refused, insisting on waiting for Guan's surrender. Meanwhile, the Qing court received Nanjing's plea and mobilized rescue forces. 10 days later, chain reinforcements arrived. Seeing the moment ripe, they counterattacked. Zheng's unprepared forces collapsed entirely within 2 days. This defeat crippled Zheng Chenggan. He shifted focus from the southeast to Taiwan. After retaking Taiwan, he soon died, ending the Zheng family's anti-Qing struggle. All right, that covers most of the book's content. Now let's summarize. After learning Southern Ming history, you'll realize anti-Qing forces weren't as weak as imagined. Beyond 3 orthodox courts, there were Shun or Shi armies, Zheng Chenggan, Zhang Hongyan, and countless local resistances. They included powerful figures like Sun Qiwang and Zheng Chenggang, loyalists like Zhang Hongyan and Li Dingguo, even rare competent rulers like Longwu, yet all failed. Why? Separately, each force failed for different reasons. But overall, Ming's downfall had one cause: disunity. They acted independently, fought each other, even betrayed allies to help Qing. Thus, despite vast territory and huge population, Ming lost to the sparsely populated Qing. Unity remains a timeless lesson worth pondering. Well, that concludes our journey through Southern Ming history. Reading notes are below the audio. See you in the next great book.